The sound of his hand connecting with my face echoes through the restaurant like a gunshot. And in the split second before the pain registers, before my head snaps violently to the side and my vision explodes into stars, I have the strangest thought. I wonder if this is what it feels like to have your entire world shatter in a single moment. To have everything you thought was safe and predictable torn away with one brutal act of violence. The sting comes next, spreading across my cheek like wildfire, and I feel something warm and wet trickling from the corner of my mouth. The metallic taste of blood flooding my tongue as my trembling fingers fly to my split lip. And I realize with a kind of detached horror that the heavy platinum ring on Dante Salvatore's hand has cut clean through the delicate skin there. Every sound in the restaurant dies instantly, the cheerful clinking of silverware and the soft murmur of conversation cutting off so abruptly that the silence feels like a living thing, pressing down on my chest and making it impossible to breathe, and I'm aware, painfully, acutely aware, that every single person in this upscale Italian establishment is staring at me, at us, at this frozen tableau of violence that seems impossible in a place that smells like fresh basil and expensive wine. My eyes are burning with tears that I absolutely refuse to let fall. Not here. Not in front of all these people who have watched me serve their meals with quiet efficiency for the past 2 years, never causing trouble, never drawing attention, always trying so hard to be invisible because invisibility has always felt like safety. Dante Salvatore towers over me, and I've served him countless times before in his private corner booth, always terrified of making a mistake because everyone who works at Carmelo's knows exactly who he is. The man who runs this city's underworld with an iron fist. The youngest Don in the Salvatore crime family's history. The kind of man whose dark eyes can make grown men weep and whose word can end lives with a casual gesture. I've seen those eyes cold and calculating as he conducts business over plates of ossobuco, watched him from the corner of my vision as I refilled water glasses and cleared courses, always moving quickly and quietly because drawing the attention of a man like Dante Salvatore seemed like the most dangerous thing a girl like me could possibly do. And yet here I am, the full force of his fury focused on me like a spotlight I never wanted. "You lying little thief," he snarls, and his voice is rough with rage, each word hitting me like another blow even though his hand has dropped back to his side. "You thought I wouldn't notice? You thought you could steal from me and I'd just let it go?" His accusation makes no sense, the words tumbling through my shocked mind without finding purchase. Because I haven't stolen anything. Have never stolen anything in my entire life, not even a grape from the grocery, store when I was a child, and desperately hungry after my mother died, and my father disappeared into his mysterious work that he never explained. The very idea that I would steal from anyone, let alone from Dante Salvatore, is so absurd that I almost want to laugh, except my face is throbbing and my lip is bleeding, and I can feel my job slipping away with every passing second. And without this job, I can't pay for Nona's medications or the bills that pile up relentlessly in our tiny apartment. "I didn't," I start to say, but my voice comes out as barely a whisper, so soft and broken that I'm not even sure anyone can hear it, and I have to swallow hard against the sob that's building in my throat before I can try again. "I didn't take anything, sir. I swear I would never." But he cuts me off with a sharp gesture, his hand slicing through the air between us, and I flinch instinctively, my body remembering the violence of moments ago and expecting more to follow. "Don't lie to me," he growls, and there's something almost like hurt beneath the anger in his voice, as if my supposed betrayal has wounded him personally, which makes no sense because I'm nothing to him, just the shy waitress who brings his drinks and never meets his eyes for longer than necessary. "My watch was on that table when you cleared the dessert course, a 19th century platinum Patek Philippe that belonged to my grandfather, worth more than you'd make in 10 lifetimes. And now it's gone, and you were the only one who came near the table." The restaurant owner, Mr. Carmelo, appears at my side so quickly that he must have been hovering nearby, wringing his hands and looking between Dante and me with the expression of a man watching his entire livelihood crumble before his eyes. "Mr. Salvatore, please. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding," he says in rapid Italian accented English, his voice high and nervous. Isolde is a good girl. She's worked here for 2 years without any problems. Perhaps the watch fell. Perhaps it's under the table. But Dante's cold stare silences him mid-sentence, and I watch the color drain from Mr. Carmelo's face as he takes an involuntary step backward. Are you calling me a liar, Carmelo? Dante asks, his voice dangerously soft now. Are you suggesting I don't know whether or not my grandfather's watch is missing from my wrist? The threat in those words is unmistakable, and Mr. Carmelo begins apologizing profusely, his words tumbling over each other as he assures Dante that no, of course not. He would never suggest such a thing. And then he turns to me with eyes full of resignation and something that might be pity. Isolde, I'm sorry, but you're fired, Mr. Carmelo says, and each word feels like another slap, another piece of my carefully constructed life falling apart. Please empty your pockets and your apron, and then you need to leave immediately. The unfairness of it crashes over me like a wave, stealing what little breath I have left because I've done nothing wrong, absolutely nothing. And yet I'm being punished, being humiliated in front of all these people, losing the job I desperately need because of an accusation I can't defend myself against. My hands are shaking so badly that I can barely untie my apron, and I'm aware of Dante's men, 3 large, dangerous-looking men in expensive suits who always accompany him, moving closer, forming a loose circle around me as if I might try to run, as if a girl like me would have anywhere to run to even if I wanted to. Check her, Dante orders, and one of his men steps forward, his expression professionally blank as he gestures for me to turn out my pockets. The humiliation of it burns hotter than the pain in my face as I pull out the meager contents of my uniform pockets. A small notepad, 2 pens, a few folded bills and coins and tips that I haven't had a chance to put in my bag yet, a hair tie, a mint. No watch, of course, because I didn't take any watch, but the absence of evidence doesn't seem to matter because Dante's face is still hard and cold as he watches his man examine my belongings. Check her bag, he says next, and my heart sinks because my bag is in the break room, and the idea of these men pawing through my personal things, through the photos of Nonna, and the romance novel I've been reading on my breaks, and the anxiety medication I take when the panic attacks get too bad, feels like a violation I can barely stand. But before anyone can move toward the break room, something inside me finally breaks. Some last thread of my patience or my fear, or my willingness to just accept whatever fate hands me. And I feel a strange calm settling over my shaking limbs as I realize that there's one person, only one person in the entire world who might be able to help me, even though I haven't seen him in 5 years, even though he left me and Nonna without any real explanation, beyond vague warnings about staying safe and staying hidden. My father's final words to me echo in my memory. If you ever need me, truly need me, call this number and I will come. And he'd pressed a phone number into my hand that I'd memorized and then destroyed the paper because he'd told me to. And I've never used it because what could possibly be important enough to summon a man who chose to disappear from his own daughter's life? But apparently this is important enough. Apparently being assaulted and accused, and about to be searched by Mafia thugs, qualifies as truly needing him. And my hand moves almost of its own accord to pull my cell phone from my apron pocket, with fingers that have finally stopped trembling. What are you doing? Dante demands, his voice sharp as he notices me holding my phone. But I don't answer him because I'm already dialing the number I've carried in my head for 5 years like a talisman, like a secret prayer I never thought I'd actually speak aloud. The phone rings once, twice, and I'm terrified it won't be answered, that the number won't work anymore, that my father has moved on so completely that even this last connection has been severed. But then there's a click, and a voice I haven't heard in so long that it makes my chest ache with sudden, overwhelming emotion. Papa, I whisper, and my voice breaks on the word. All the tears I've been holding back finally spilling over and running down my cheeks, mixing with the blood from my split lip. Papa, I need you so much, please. My words are tumbling out in a rush now, incoherent and desperate, and I'm barely aware of Dante moving closer, of his hand reaching out toward my phone. "Who are you calling?" he demands again. And this time, there's something different in his voice, something that might be concern or confusion. But I don't care because my father is on the other end of this line, and for the first time since Dante's hand connected with my face, I feel like maybe, just maybe, I'm not completely alone and helpless. "Isolde? Bambina, is that you?" My father's voice comes through the speaker, and there's something in his tone that I've never heard before. Something sharp and alert and almost frightened. And I realize that he's probably never expected to receive this call. That my using this number must mean something terrible has happened, because he knows I would never contact him for anything less than a true emergency. "What's wrong? Where are you? Are you hurt?" The rapid-fire questions come at me, and I'm trying to answer, trying to explain through my tears and my split lip and my shaking voice. But then Dante's hand closes around my wrist. Not roughly this time, but firmly. And he takes the phone from my trembling fingers. "I don't know who you think you're calling, sweetheart, but nobody's going to save you from—" Dante starts to say as he raises my phone to his ear, clearly intending to intimidate whoever is on the other end. But then he stops mid-sentence, and I watch in confusion as all the color drains from his face, as his dark eyes go wide with something that looks almost like terror, and his grip on my wrist loosens so suddenly that I stumble backward. "Isolde? Bambina?" My father's voice is loud enough now that I can hear it, even though Dante is holding the phone, and I watch as Dante's hand begins to shake, as he stares at my phone like it's a venomous snake that's about to strike. The restaurant is still silent, everyone watching this strange tableau, and I can see Dante's men exchanging confused glances, clearly uncertain what's happening to their usually unshakable boss. "Papa, a man hit me," I say, my voice stronger now even though I'm still crying, and I see Dante flinch at my words as if I've struck him back. "He says I stole from him, but I didn't. I swear I didn't take anything, and he hit me and now they're going to search me and I'm fired and I don't know what to do." I'm rambling now, everything pouring out in a rush, and through my phone's speaker, I hear my father take a sharp, hissing breath, the kind of sound someone makes when they've been hurt. And then there's a long, terrible silence that seems to stretch on forever. The kind of silence that comes before a storm, or an earthquake, or some other natural disaster that you can sense coming but can't possibly prevent. When my father finally speaks again, his voice has changed completely, gone flat and cold, and filled with something that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up even though I can barely hear him. "Put him on the phone," Papa says, and even though the words are quiet, there's a command in them that seems to reach through the speaker and wrap around Dante like invisible chains, because he immediately puts the phone on speaker and holds it between us, his hand still shaking in a way that seems completely wrong for a man like him. "I'm listening," Dante says, and I can hear the effort it takes for him to keep his voice steady, can see a muscle jumping in his jaw as he stares at my phone like it contains all his nightmares. "Who am I speaking to?" my father asks, and his voice through the speaker is calm now, terrifyingly calm, the kind of calm that feels more dangerous than any amount of shouting could ever be. Dante swallows hard, and I watch his throat work as he forces out words that seem to cost him something to say. "Dante Salvatore," he answers, and I hear one of his men behind me make a small sound of shock, though I don't understand why my father knowing Dante's name should matter. "And who did you just strike, Mr. Salvatore?" my father asks, still in that same deadly calm voice. "What is the name of the young woman whose face you marked with your hand and your ring?" Dante's eyes close briefly, and when they open again, they're focused on me with an expression I can't read. Something between horror and disbelief, and a desperate kind of hope that maybe, somehow, this isn't as catastrophic as he clearly thinks it is. "She said her name is Isolde," Dante says carefully, and I can hear him trying to maintain some semblance of control, even though everything about his body language screams that he's losing it rapidly. "She worked, as a waitress at Carmelo's restaurant." There's another long silence from my father's end, and then I hear him say something in Italian, too low and fast for me to catch. But whatever it is makes Dante's face go from pale to completely white, and he actually takes a step backward, nearly dropping my phone in the process. "Do you know who I am, Mr. Salvatore?" my father asks, and there's something almost gentle in the question, the kind of gentleness that predators use right before they strike. Dante's response is barely a whisper, and I have to strain to hear it even though he's standing right in front of me. "Alessandro Crane," he breathes, and the name seems to hit his men like a physical blow because they all go rigid, their faces reflecting the same terror that's written across Dante's features, and I'm so confused because I don't understand what's happening, don't understand why my father's name would provoke this reaction from these dangerous men. "Now you understand," my father says, and there's satisfaction in his voice now, dark and sharp. "Now you comprehend the magnitude of your mistake, don't you, Mr. Salvatore?" Dante doesn't answer, just stands there frozen, and I can see his mind working frantically behind his eyes, can almost watch him trying to find some way out of whatever trap he's stumbled into. "Isolde," my father says, and his voice softens again when he addresses me. Becomes the gentle voice I remember from before he left, from when he used to tuck me in at night and promise me that everything would always be okay. "Listen to me very carefully, Bambina. You are going to walk out of that restaurant right now, and no one is going to stop you, do you understand? No one is going to touch you or speak to you or follow you. You're going to go straight home to your nonna, and you're going to lock the doors and wait for me." "But Papa," I start to say, wanting to understand what's happening, wanting to know why these men look like they've seen death itself. But he cuts me off with a firmness that brooks no argument. "Do as I say, Isolde, please, just this once do exactly as I tell you without questions." And there's something in his voice that might be fear, actual fear. And the idea of my father being afraid of anything is so foreign that it silences my protests. "And Isolde? Tell the man who touched you, tell Dante Salvatore, that Alessandro Crane is coming home, and when I arrive, we're going to have a very long conversation about what he's done to my daughter." The line goes dead before I can respond, and I'm left staring at my phone in my shaking hand, while Dante continues to look like a man who's just been handed his own death sentence. And the only sound in the entire restaurant is my ragged breathing, and the thundering of my heart in my ears. And all I can think is that I need to know what happens next. Need to understand who my father really is, and why his name can turn the most feared mafia boss in the city into a trembling shadow of himself. The walk from Carmelo's restaurant to the small apartment I share with Nonna feels simultaneously endless and far too short, my feet carrying me through familiar streets that suddenly seem strange and threatening, as if the entire world has shifted on its axis in the space of 20 minutes, and nothing will ever look the same again. My face throbs with every step, the split in my lip sending little jolts of pain through my jaw whenever I accidentally touch it with my tongue, and I can feel people staring at me as I pass, their eyes lingering on the mark that Dante Salvatore's ring left across my cheek, the bruise that I know is already forming in shades of purple and red that will be impossible to hide. I should be crying, should be falling apart completely after what just happened, after being assaulted and accused and fired all in the span of minutes. But instead I feel numb, wrapped in a strange cocoon of shock that keeps the full weight of the trauma at bay, while my mind tries desperately to process everything, tries to make sense of the terror I saw in Dante's eyes when he heard my father's name. Alessandro Crane, that's what Dante called him, speaking the name like a curse or a prayer, or perhaps both at once. And I realize with a start that I don't actually know if Crane is my real last name, or if it's something my father gave me when he left. One more piece of the puzzle of his life that he never explained to his daughter. I've always been Isolde Marino, taking my mother's maiden name after she died when I was 12, and I just assumed that was how it had always been, but now I'm wondering if everything I thought I knew about my identity is as false as my belief that my father was just a businessman who traveled too much. who loved me and Nonna, but had mysterious obligations that pulled him away from us more and more frequently, until finally he disappeared altogether. The questions multiply in my mind with every step, breeding and multiplying like living things. Who is Alessandro Crane? What did he do that makes dangerous men fear his name? Why did he leave us? And perhaps most urgently, what is going to happen when he comes home like he promised? By the time I reach our apartment building, a rundown structure in a neighborhood that's seen better days, my hands have finally stopped shaking enough that I can get my key into the lock, though it takes me 3 tries because my vision keeps blurring with tears that I'm still refusing to let fall properly. Nonna is in her usual chair by the window, the afternoon light making a halo of her white hair as she works on the embroidery that keeps her gnarled, arthritis-twisted hands busy. And she looks up with a smile when she hears me come in, a smile that immediately dies when she sees my face. "Madonna Santa," she breathes, and the embroidery falls forgotten to her lap as she struggles to rise from her chair, moving with the painful slowness of her 82 years and the joint disease that has stolen so much of her mobility. "Isolde, cara mia, what happened to you? Who did this?" Her voice rises with each word, fear and fury mixing in equal measure, and I find myself moving to her quickly, gently pushing her back into her chair because I can't bear to watch her hurt herself trying to reach me. "I'm okay, Nonna," I lie, kneeling beside her chair and taking her twisted hands in mine, trying to still their trembling. "There was an accident at work, but I'm fine, really." But she's not fooled for even a second, her sharp, dark eyes examining my face with the ruthless attention to detail that age has done nothing to diminish. And I watch her take in the mark on my cheek, the split lip, the way I'm holding myself as if I might shatter at any moment. "That's no accident, that's a man's hand," she says flatly, and there's something in her voice that reminds me suddenly of my father's tone on the phone, that same cold flatness that speaks of rage held under iron control. "Tell me who did this to you, Isolde. Tell me right now." So I tell her everything, the words spilling out of me in a rush. Dante's accusation, the missing watch I never took, the slap that echoed through the restaurant, my desperate phone call to Papa and his promise to come home. And I watch Nonna's face transform as I speak. Watch something that looks almost like recognition dawn in her eyes, followed quickly by fear. "You called your father," she says, and it's not a question but a statement, heavy with implications I don't understand. "After 5 years of silence, you called Alessandro and he's coming here." She closes her eyes, and for the first time in my life I see my grandmother look truly old, truly fragile, as if the news I've just delivered has aged her another decade in the space of seconds. "Oh, Bambina, do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand what it means that he's coming back?" Her reaction confuses me, frightens me even more than Dante's terror did, because Nonna has always been the steady one, the rock that I've clung to through every storm of my life, and seeing her this shaken makes me feel like the ground is crumbling beneath my feet. "What do you mean?" I ask, and I hate how small my voice sounds, how much like a frightened child I must seem. "Why is everyone so afraid of Papa? What is he? What did he do?" Nonna opens her eyes and looks at me for a long moment, and I can see her weighing something in her mind, can see the exact moment she decides that the time for secrets has passed, and truth, however terrible, is all that's left to give me. "Your father," she says slowly, choosing each word with care, "is not the businessman he pretended to be when you were young, Cara. Alessandro Crane was one of the most powerful and feared figures in the criminal underworld, not just in this city or this country, but internationally, across continents and organizations." The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing with the force of Dante's hand all over again, and I find myself shaking my head in denial, even as part of me recognizes the truth in what she's saying, even as pieces of my childhood suddenly make sense in ways I never wanted them to. "He was called the Phantom, Nonna continues, her voice barely above a whisper now, as if speaking the name too loudly might summon something dangerous. He was the man other crime bosses called when they needed problems solved, when they needed someone who could move through the world like a ghost and accomplish the impossible. And he was very, very good at what he did. I pull my hands away from hers, standing up so quickly that I stumble, my mind reeling with this new information that rewrites my entire history, that transforms my beloved Papa from an absent but loving father into something else entirely, something I can't quite process or accept. No, I hear myself saying, and the word comes out harsh and desperate. No, that's not. Papa wouldn't. He's not a criminal. He's not some kind of mob boss or hitman or whatever you're suggesting. But even as I protest, I'm remembering things, small details from my childhood that I never questioned at the time, but that now take on sinister new meanings. The way men would defer to my father when we went out. The expensive gifts that appeared without explanation. The nights he would come home with blood on his shirt cuffs that he claimed came from accidents at work. The way he would sometimes look at me with such profound sadness and say things like, "You deserve a better father than I can be," and "Stay innocent, Bambina. Stay soft and kind because this world needs people like you. Your father loved you more than anything," Nonna says, and there are tears running down her weathered cheeks now. "Everything he did, every choice he made, was to protect you and your mother, to keep you safe from the life he led, and when your mother died..." Her voice breaks, and she has to pause to compose herself before continuing. "When Maria was killed by Alessandro's enemies, when they murdered my daughter to hurt him, he realized that you would never be safe as long as anyone knew you were his child, as long as his enemies could find you and use you against him. The revelation that my mother didn't die in a car accident like I've always been told, that she was murdered, that someone deliberately took her from us, sends me to my knees again, the strength going out of my legs as if someone has cut the tendons. So he did the only thing he could think of," Nonna continues through her tears. "He faked his own death to the underworld. He gave you a new name. He erased every connection between you and Alessandro Crane, and then he disappeared, watching over you from the shadows but never coming close enough that anyone could trace you back to him." The apartment is silent except for our crying. Nonna in her chair and me on the floor between her and the window. And I'm trying to absorb this new reality, trying to reconcile the father I remember. The man who taught me to ride a bike and read me stories and made me feel like the most precious thing in the world, with this phantom figure who lived in the darkness and did terrible things for terrible reasons. "He sacrificed everything to keep you invisible," Nonna says softly, reaching down to stroke my hair the way she used to when I was a child and had nightmares. "His reputation, his power, his life, all of it meant nothing compared to keeping you safe, keeping you hidden from the monsters who would have destroyed you to hurt him. And for 5 years it worked. For 5 years you were just Isolde Marino, a normal girl living a normal life that no one paid attention to." I look up at her through my tears, understanding dawning with horrible clarity. "Until tonight," I whisper, and she nods slowly. "Until you called him in a restaurant full of witnesses. Until you spoke to Alessandro Crane where Dante Salvatore and his men could hear. Until you painted a target on your own back that announces to every enemy your father ever made that the Phantom's daughter is alive and vulnerable. The implications of what I've done crash over me like a tidal wave, and I feel like I'm drowning in the consequences of a single phone call made in desperation and fear. A call that seemed like my only option, but that has apparently shattered 5 years of careful protection and exposed me to dangers I can't even begin to imagine. But I didn't know," I say desperately, needing Nonna to understand that I would never have deliberately endangered myself, or her, or my father, if I'd had any idea of the truth. "How could I have known? Papa never told me. He never explained. He just left, and I thought he just didn't want us anymore. I thought we weren't important enough." The words dissolve into sobs, and Nonna is crying harder now too. And we're both wrapped up in grief and fear and the terrible knowledge that everything is about to change in ways neither of us can control or predict. Hours pass in a blur of tears and halting conversation as Nona tells me more about my father's life, about the things he did, and the power he wielded, and the fear his name inspired, painting a picture of a man I never knew existed underneath the loving father I remember. She tells me about my mother, too, about how Maria had known what Alessandro was but loved him anyway, how she'd made him promise that their daughter would never be part of that world, how her dying words had been a plea for him to keep me safe and innocent no matter what it cost. The sun is setting, painting our shabby apartment in shades of orange and red that look like fire or blood when we hear footsteps in the hallway outside, measured and unhurried, the steps of someone who has no fear of what they might find when they reach their destination. Nona and I both freeze, our eyes meeting across the small space, and I see my own fear reflected in her face as the footsteps stop outside our door and someone knocks 3 times, patient and polite, and somehow more terrifying than if they'd tried to break the door down. "Isolde!" A voice calls from the other side of the door, and my breath catches because I know that voice even though I haven't heard it in 5 years, know it in my bones, and in my blood, and in every cell of my body that remembers being held safe in my father's arms. "Bambina, it's me, it's Papa. Please open the door." I move without thinking, my body responding to that voice the way it always has, crossing the small space to unlock and open the door, with hands that have started shaking again, and then my father is standing in the doorway and he looks exactly the same and completely different all at once. He's older than I remember. Silver threading through the dark hair at his temples and lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth. But he still has that presence that I remember. That quality of contained power that makes the air around him feel charged with potential energy. And when his eyes, dark eyes that are so much like my own, land on my face and take in the mark Dante left there, I watch something terrible and cold settle over his features like a mask. "Oh, Bambina," he breathes, and then he's moving forward and pulling me into his arms, and I'm sobbing against his chest the way I haven't cried since I was a child. Great heaving sobs that shake my entire body while he holds me and murmurs soothing words in Italian that I only half understand. Over my head I can hear him talking to Nona, can hear the exchange of information, even though I can't focus on the actual words through my crying, and then I feel him, tense, feel every muscle in his body go rigid with a tension that speaks of violence barely contained. "He hit you hard enough to split your lip," Papa says, and his voice is still soft, but there's something underneath it now, something that makes me think of earthquakes and avalanches and other natural disasters that destroy everything in their path. "Dante Salvatore struck my daughter, marked her face, humiliated her in public, and all because of a theft she didn't commit." I pull back enough to look up at him, confused by his phrasing. "How do you know I didn't take his watch?" I ask, and Papa's smile is terrible to behold, all sharp edges and no warmth. "Because I know you, Isolde, know that you're incapable of theft or deception, and because I spent the last several hours learning everything about Dante Salvatore and his organization. And I know that his cousin Marco stole that watch and planted evidence pointing to you because he's jealous of Dante's position, and thought causing chaos would create an opportunity to seize power." The casual way he delivers this information, as if discovering the truth of a complex crime family conspiracy is as simple as checking the weather, reminds me forcefully that my father is not and has never been a normal man, that Alessandro Crane operates on a level I can't even comprehend. "Papa?" I say hesitantly, not sure how to ask what I need to know, not sure I even want to hear the answer. "What are you going to do?" "Nona said. She said that me calling you exposed me, that now everyone knows I'm your daughter, that I'm in danger." He cups my face in his hands, careful not to touch the bruise, and looks at me with an intensity that makes me feel like he's trying to memorize every detail, as if he's afraid he might lose me. "You are in danger. More danger than you've ever been in your life. And that is entirely my fault for the life I led and the enemies I made. But I promise you, Bambina, I will keep you safe, I will protect you even if it costs me everything." His words should be reassuring, but instead they fill me with dread because they sound like goodbye. Like a man preparing for a sacrifice he knows he won't survive. But what about Dante? I press, needing to understand what happens next. What are you going to do to him? Papa's expression goes cold again, that terrible emptiness settling over his features, and when he speaks, his voice is the voice of the phantom, of Alessandro Crane the legend rather than Papa the loving father. I'm going to give Dante Salvatore a choice, he says quietly, and I can hear death in those words, can hear the promise of violence and retribution. He can die quickly and cleanly for what he did to you, or he can dedicate every resource of his organization, every ounce of his power and influence, to protecting you from the storm that's coming. Because make no mistake, Isolde, my old enemies are already moving, already gathering like wolves who've scented blood, and they will come for you with everything they have. And the only question is whether Dante Salvatore will be part of your protection, or will be the first body I leave in my wake. The finality in his voice terrifies me. The casual way he speaks of killing a man as powerful and dangerous as Dante Salvatore. And I realize that I'm looking at my father as if for the first time, seeing not the man who held me when I cried, but the phantom who made crime lords tremble at the mention of his name. And the worst part is that I don't know which version is real or if perhaps they both are. Two sides of the same complicated, dangerous, devoted man who destroyed his own life to protect mine, and is now preparing to wage war to keep me safe from the consequences of a single desperate phone call I made when I had no idea what I was unleashing into the world. The penthouse where my father takes me that very night is so far removed from the cramped apartment I've shared with Nonna for the past 5 years that it feels like stepping into a completely different world. A world of floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over the glittering city lights and marble floors so polished I can see my reflection in them, and furniture that probably costs more than I've earned in my entire working life. Nonna is here too, settled into a bedroom that's larger than our entire previous living space, with a nurse who appeared out of nowhere to help her with her medications and her painful joints, and I can see the conflicted emotions on her face every time she looks at my father. Relief that he's here, that we're safe in this fortress he's created, mixed with the old grief of losing her daughter, and the fear of what's coming next. I haven't slept at all, can't even imagine closing my eyes when my mind is racing with everything that's happened, everything I've learned, and every time I catch a glimpse of my reflection in one of the many mirrors scattered throughout this opulent space, I'm confronted with the mark on my face, the visible evidence of Dante Salvatore's violence that has somehow set all of this in motion. My father has been gone since before dawn, disappearing with a kiss to my forehead and a promise that he'll be back soon. And I know without being told that he's gone to confront Dante, to deliver the choice he spoke of last night: death or protection, vengeance or redemption. The waiting is unbearable, each minute stretching into an eternity as I pace the length of the main room, my footsteps silent on the expensive rugs, my mind conjuring increasingly terrible scenarios of what might be happening in whatever location my father has chosen for this reckoning. I keep thinking about Dante's face when he heard my father's name, the way all the color drained from his features, and his hands started shaking. And I wonder if he spent the night the same way I did, sleepless and terrified, knowing that Alessandro Crane was coming for him and that there was absolutely nothing he could do to prevent it. Part of me, a small, vindictive part that I'm not proud of, wants my father to make Dante suffer, wants him to feel even a fraction of the fear and humiliation and pain that I felt when his hand connected with my face. But a larger part of me, the part that Nonna says is too soft for this world, just wants all of this to be over, wants to wake up and find that it was all a nightmare and I'm still just Isolde the waitress living her quiet, invisible life. The sun is climbing higher in the sky, painting the city in shades of gold and amber, when I finally hear the private elevator that leads directly into the penthouse chime, and my heart leaps into my throat as I spin toward the doors, expecting to see my father returning alone or perhaps with blood on his hands. But instead what I see makes my breath catch, and my feet root to the floor in shock. My father does emerge from the elevator, looking composed and unruffled despite whatever he's been doing for the past several hours, but he's not alone. Walking beside him, moving with the careful deliberation of a man who's injured or exhausted, or perhaps both, is Dante Salvatore himself. And the sight of him here in my father's sanctuary is so unexpected that for a moment I can only stare. He looks terrible, and I feel a confusing mix of satisfaction and concern as I take in the shadows under his eyes that suggest he hasn't slept either. The pallor of his skin that makes him look almost ill, and the way he's holding himself as if every movement causes him pain, though I can't see any obvious injuries through his expensive suit that looks rumpled and lived in a way that suggests he's been wearing it since yesterday. "Isolde," my father says, and his voice is gentle in that way he reserves only for me. So different from the cold authority I heard when he spoke about giving Dante a choice. "I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you, and I need you to trust me, even if what I'm asking seems impossible or unfair." I tear my eyes away from Dante, who hasn't looked at me directly yet, his gaze fixed on some point just past my shoulder, as if he can't bear to see the mark his ring left on my face. And I focus on my father, trying to read in his expression what he's decided, what choice Dante made or was forced to make. "Mr. Salvatore and I have had a very long conversation," Papa continues, moving further into the room and gesturing for Dante to follow, which he does with the wariness of a man walking into a trap he can't avoid. "We've discussed what happened yesterday, the mistakes that were made, the consequences that are already in motion, and the very limited options we have for keeping you safe from what's coming." The word "we" catches my attention. The implication that somehow my father and the man who struck me are now working together in some capacity. And I feel anger flaring hot in my chest, burning away some of the fear and confusion. "What do you mean, we?" I demand, and I can hear my voice shaking with emotion that I'm trying desperately to control. "Papa, he hit me. He accused me of something I didn't do. He humiliated me and fired me, and he doesn't get to just—" But my father holds up a hand, stopping my tirade mid-sentence. And there's something in his eyes that makes me swallow my protests, even though they're still churning inside me like a storm. "I know what he did, Bambina. Believe me. I know every detail of what Dante Salvatore did to my daughter, and if I followed my first instinct, if I allowed my rage to guide my actions, his body would already be cooling in a ditch somewhere, and I would be starting a war with the Salvatore family that would paint this city red with blood." The casual way he speaks of murder, of war, of violence on a scale I can barely comprehend, reminds me again that my gentle papa and Alessandro Crane the Phantom are the same person, and I don't know how to reconcile those two realities in my mind. "But," Papa continues, and now he's looking at me with an intensity that demands my full attention, "my first responsibility is not vengeance, no matter how much I might want it. My first responsibility is keeping you alive, keeping you safe from the enemies who are already mobilizing against you because they know that hurting you is the only way they can hurt me." He pauses, letting that sink in, and I can feel the weight of it pressing down on me. The knowledge that somewhere out there are people I've never met who want me dead simply because of whose daughter I am. "When you called me yesterday, when you spoke my name where witnesses could hear, you didn't just expose yourself to my enemies. You exposed yourself to every grudge, every vendetta, every old score that someone wants to settle with Alessandro Crane, and there are more of those than you can possibly imagine because I made a lot of enemies in my years operating in the shadows." His voice is heavy, with regret, with the guilt of a father who knows his past sins are about to be visited upon his innocent daughter, and I can see the pain in his eyes even as he maintains his composure. "So what does that have to do with him?" I ask, pointing at Dante without looking at him directly, still unable to fully face the man who hurt me even though he's standing less than 20 feet away in the middle of my father's penthouse. Papa glances at Dante and something passes between them, some silent communication that I'm not privy to, before he returns his attention to me. Dante Salvatore has chosen to dedicate every resource of his organization to protecting you, Papa says carefully, and I can hear that he's choosing his words with precision, trying to make me understand something that seems incomprehensible. He understands the magnitude of what he's done, understands that his actions yesterday have painted a target on your back, and he has agreed to serve as your primary protector, to use his power and influence in this city to keep you safe from the threats that are already gathering. The words don't make sense at first, bouncing around in my head without finding purchase, because the idea that Dante Salvatore would willingly protect me after what he did seems absurd, seems like some kind of trick or manipulation that I'm too naive to see through. I don't want his protection, I say flatly, and I'm surprised by how steady my voice sounds despite the emotions churning inside me. I don't want anything from him. I don't want to see him or speak to him or... But Papa is shaking his head, and there's a sadness in his expression that makes my protests die in my throat. It's not about what you want, Bambina. It's about what will keep you alive, he says, and the bluntness of it is like a slap, another reminder that my life has fundamentally changed in ways I'm still struggling to accept. I can't protect you myself, not completely, not anymore. My network is 5 years old, my connections are rusty, and the moment I revealed myself to save you, I became a target too, which means anyone watching me will find you. He moves closer to me, taking my hands in his, and I can feel them trembling slightly, even though his voice remains calm. Dante Salvatore has something I don't have, an active organization, current intelligence, soldiers and resources that are already in place and operational. And most importantly, he has the motivation to keep you safe because he knows that if anything happens to you, if you suffer so much as a scratch under his watch, I will destroy everything he's ever built, and everyone he's ever cared about before I kill him in the slowest, most painful way I can devise. The threat in those words is absolute, and I see Dante flinch slightly at their delivery, even though he must have already heard some version of this speech from my father earlier. He doesn't have a choice in this, Papa continues, and now there's something almost like pity in his voice when he glances at Dante. He made a catastrophic mistake when he struck you, when he accused you without evidence, when he marked the daughter of Alessandro Crane, and now he's paying for that mistake with his freedom, with his autonomy, with his entire organization's resources, because the alternative is death and the destruction of everything he's built. I finally force myself to look directly at Dante, really look at him, and what I see in his face is not the fury I remember from yesterday, but something else entirely. Shame, regret, and a kind of desperate determination that suggests he's already accepted his fate and is simply trying to figure out how to survive it. Is that true? I ask him directly, my voice barely above a whisper. Did my father give you a choice between dying or protecting me? Dante's dark eyes finally meet mine, and I see him wince when he takes in the full damage he did to my face, the bruise that's bloomed across my cheek, in shades of purple and green, the split in my lip that's still tender and swollen. Yes, he says, and his voice is hoarse, rougher than I remember it being yesterday when he was shouting accusations at me. Your father explained exactly what I've done, exactly what I've set in motion by striking you, and he gave me a choice. I could die for my crime against you, quick and clean, or I could live and spend every resource at my disposal, keeping you safe from the consequences of my actions. He swallows hard, and I can see his throat work with the effort. I chose to live, chose to try to make amends for what I did. But please understand that this isn't just about saving my own life. I would have deserved death for what I did to you, for striking an innocent woman based on nothing but circumstantial evidence and my own paranoia about being stolen from. The admission sounds like it costs him something to make, like each word is being dragged out of him against his will, and I can see that he means it, that he genuinely believes he deserves whatever punishment might be coming. Your father has assigned me as your primary guardian, Dante continues when I don't respond, and there's a bitter irony in his tone that suggests he understands exactly how absurd this situation is. The man who hurt you must now be the one to keep you safe, and I know how impossible that must seem. How much you must hate me for what I did. But I swear to you, Isolde, I will protect you with my life if necessary. I will put my entire organization between you and anyone who tries to harm you, because the guilt of what I've done is already eating me alive, and the only way I can live with myself is to try to make this right. I want to argue, want to insist that there's no way this can work, that I can't possibly trust the man who assaulted me to keep me safe. But before I can formulate the words, the floor-to-ceiling windows behind us explode inward in a shower of glass, and the sharp crack of gunfire echoes through the penthouse, and suddenly Dante is moving, crossing the space between us faster than I would have thought possible, and slamming into me with enough force to drive us both to the ground as bullets tear through the air where I was standing just seconds before. The world becomes chaos and noise and terror as my father is shouting orders into a phone that appeared in his hand from nowhere, as more gunshots ring out from multiple directions, as Dante covers my body with his own, and I can feel the impact as at least one bullet hits him, can feel his grunt of pain vibrate through his chest that's pressed against my back. "Stay down," he growls in my ear, and there's nothing but fierce determination in his voice despite what must be agonizing pain. "Don't move, don't lift your head, just stay exactly where you are." I'm shaking uncontrollably, my hands pressed flat against the expensive rug that's now littered with broken glass, and I can feel something warm and wet soaking through the back of my shirt, and I realize with horror that it's blood, Dante's blood, spilling from whatever wound he just took protecting me. The gunfire continues for what feels like hours but is probably only minutes, and then suddenly it stops, cut off as abruptly as it began, and in the ringing silence that follows I can hear my father's voice, cold and commanding, giving orders to people I can't see. "Isolde, are you hurt?" Papa is suddenly beside us, his hands gentle as he checks me for injuries, and I can hear the barely controlled panic underlying his calm tone. "I'm okay," I manage to say, though my voice sounds strange and distant to my own ears. "I'm not hurt, but Dante, he's bleeding. He got shot." My father is already moving, already pulling Dante off me with surprising strength for a man his age, and I roll over to see Dante clutching his left shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers, his face pale and tight with pain, but his eyes still alert, still scanning the room for threats. "The sniper is neutralized," someone says, and I turn to see several men in dark suits that I didn't even notice entering the penthouse, all of them armed and moving with military precision as they secure the space and check the perimeter. "How did they find us so quickly?" my father demands, and there's fury in his voice now, the kind of cold rage that makes everyone in the room go very still. "I've only been back for 24 hours. I took every precaution. How did they already locate my daughter?" One of the suited men approaches with a tablet, showing my father something on the screen that makes his expression go even darker. "They've been watching Dante Salvatore," the man explains, and his tone is carefully neutral. "They must have known that if the Phantom came back, he'd either kill Salvatore or use him, and they had surveillance on all of Salvatore's properties and known associates." My father looks at Dante with an expression I can't quite read, something between respect and resentment and grim acknowledgement. "You took a bullet for her," Papa says, and it's not a question. "You could have used your own men as shields, could have let someone else take the hit, but you covered her with your own body." Dante is breathing heavily, his face getting paler by the second as the blood loss takes its toll, but he meets my father's gaze steadily. "I told you I would protect her with my life if necessary," he says through gritted teeth. "I meant it, and I'll keep meaning it for as long as it takes to make up for what I did to her, even if that's the rest of my life." My father studies him for a long moment, and then he nods once, sharp and decisive. "Get him medical attention," he orders, and immediately 2 of the suited men are helping Dante to his feet, supporting him as they guide him toward one of the bedrooms, where presumably a doctor is already waiting, because my father seems to have thought of everything. As they pass me, Dante's eyes find mine, and there's something in his gaze that I don't have words for, something raw and honest and almost pleading. And I realize that in the space of a single day, This man has gone from my attacker to my protector, has literally taken a bullet meant for me. And I don't know what to do with that information. Don't know how to process the complexity of feeling grateful to someone I should hate. Papa, I say, once Dante has been taken away, and it's just my father and me and the security team that's now swarming through the penthouse, examining the shattered windows and the bullet holes in the walls. What's happening? Who tried to kill me? How did they know where to find me? My father pulls me into his arms, holding me close the way he used to when I was a child, and had nightmares, and I can feel him trembling slightly, the only sign of how close he came to losing me. That was Konstantin Volkov, he says quietly, his voice muffled against my hair. A Russian crime lord who I destroyed 20 years ago, when he tried to move into territory I controlled, and he's been waiting all this time for a chance at revenge. And now he has it because he knows that the only way to truly hurt me is through you. The name means nothing to me, but the weight of it, the history contained in those syllables, makes me understand that this is just the beginning, that the storm my father warned me about has arrived with a violence and speed that none of us were fully prepared for. And as I stand there in his arms, surrounded by broken glass and bullet holes, and the blood that Dante Salvatore spilled protecting me from consequences I never asked for, I realize that my old life is truly gone, burned away in the space between yesterday's slap and today's assassination attempt. And the only question now is whether I'll survive long enough to build something new from the ashes, and whether the man who destroyed my innocence might somehow become the one who helps me find the strength to face whatever comes next. The weeks that follow the assassination attempt blur together into a strange new reality, where I'm living in a different safe house almost every 3 days, each one more secure and isolated than the last, surrounded constantly by Dante's men, who watch every entrance and exit with the vigilance of soldiers in a war zone, which I suppose is exactly what this has become. A war where I'm both the prize and the battlefield, the innocent bystander caught between my father's legendary past and the enemies who see my destruction as the ultimate revenge against the phantom who disappeared 5 years ago. Dante has become a permanent fixture in my life, a shadow that follows me everywhere despite the bullet wound in his shoulder that's still healing. Despite the fact that every time I look at him, I'm reminded of that moment in the restaurant when his hand connected with my face and my entire world shattered, and the contradiction of those two realities, the man who hurt me and the man who's now literally placing his body between me and death, creates a confusion in my heart that I don't know how to navigate or resolve. He's different now than he was that night at Carmelo's. The arrogant fury that drove him to strike me replaced by something quieter and more haunted. And I catch him sometimes staring at the fading bruise on my face with an expression of such profound regret that it's almost painful to witness, as if the mark he left on my skin has branded itself even deeper into his conscience. The assassination attempts have become a horrible routine, each one more sophisticated than the last, as Volkov throws resources at the problem of my continued existence. Poisoned food that Dante insists on tasting before I eat anything, his face going gray, and his body convulsing as the toxins race through his system while his men rush him to the emergency antidote. A sniper's bullet that he takes in the leg while shoving me out of the firing line during a supposedly secure transfer between locations. A car bomb that destroys the vehicle we were supposed to be traveling in, but weren't because Dante's paranoia made him change the plan at the last second. I've lost count of how many times he's bled for me, how many scars he's collecting in his effort to keep me alive, and the guilt of it sits heavy in my chest because I never asked for this protection, never wanted to be the reason another person suffers, even if that person is the same one who started all of this with his unfounded accusation and his violence. My father visits when he can, but he's busy orchestrating his own campaign against Volkov's network, working with contacts he hasn't spoken to in 5 years to systematically dismantle the Russians' operations piece by piece, and I can see the toll it's taking on him. The way he's slipping back into the role of the Phantom, even though he swore he'd left that life behind forever. Nonna is safe in a facility that's more fortress than assisted living, surrounded by my father's most trusted guards, and receiving the best medical care money can buy for her deteriorating joints. And she calls me every day to check on me, her voice wavering between relief that I'm still alive and despair that this is what her granddaughter's life has become. But it's during the quiet moments, the rare hours when there's no immediate threat, and Dante's men are maintaining a perimeter that gives us some illusion of privacy, that I find myself talking to him, really talking. And slowly, painfully, I begin to understand the man behind the violence that brought us together in the worst possible way. He tells me about the pressure of being the youngest Don in his family's history, about the paranoia that comes with knowing everyone around you either wants your position or wants you dead, about the cousin Marco who stole the watch and framed me because he thought creating chaos would give him an opening to seize power, and I can hear in his voice the exhaustion of living a life where trust is a luxury you can't afford, and violence is the only language that everyone speaks fluently. He tells me about the moment he realized what he'd done, about hearing my father's name and understanding in an instant that he'd just struck the daughter of the most dangerous man in the underworld, and more than that, understanding that he'd hurt an innocent woman based on nothing but circumstantial evidence and his own knee-jerk assumption that everyone was trying to take something from him. "I see you now, Isolde," he says to me one night when we're holed up in a cabin in the mountains, the isolation so complete that the only sounds are the wind through the trees and the crackling of the fire in the fireplace. And he's sitting across from me with his shoulder still bandaged and his leg in a brace from the sniper shot, and his face showing every one of the sleepless nights he's spent keeping watch over me. Not a waitress, not a thief, not just another person trying to use me or hurt me. I see you, and you're so much braver than I could ever be, facing all of this without breaking, without losing the essential kindness that makes you help my men when they're injured even though they work for the man who hurt you, without letting the violence turn you into something hard and cruel the way it did to me. His words unlock something in my chest, some barrier I've been maintaining between us out of self-preservation and justified anger, and I find myself responding with an honesty that surprises us both. "I don't feel brave," I admit, and my voice is small in the vast silence of the cabin. "I feel terrified every single day. Terrified that the next attempt will be the one that succeeds. Terrified that you or my father or one of your men will die protecting me. Terrified that I'll never have a normal life again. But most of all, terrified that I'm starting to care about you despite everything. Despite the fact that I should hate you for what you did. And I don't know what to do with these feelings that seem impossible and wrong, but won't go away no matter how hard I try to suppress them." The confession hangs in the air between us, and I watch Dante's expression transform. Watch hope and disbelief, and something that looks almost like pain chase across his features. "You shouldn't care about me," he says roughly, and there are tears in his eyes now. This dangerous man who's killed more people than I probably want to know about, crying because the woman he hurt is admitting she might have feelings for him. "You should hate me, should want me as far away from you as possible, should be counting the days until this is over, and you never have to see my face again, because I don't deserve your care or your forgiveness or anything except your contempt." But I'm shaking my head, and I realize that somewhere in the past weeks of watching him bleed for me, of seeing his genuine remorse and his desperate attempts to atone, of hearing him wake up from nightmares where he's hitting me over and over, and I'm begging him to stop, I've made a decision about who Dante Salvatore is, not the man he was that night in the restaurant, driven by paranoia and anger to commit an act he regrets with his entire being, but the man he's trying to become. The man who's dedicated every waking moment to keeping me safe even though it costs him blood and pain, and the slow erosion of his own organization as he redirects all his resources toward my protection. I'm not saying I forgive you completely. I'm not saying the mark you left on my face doesn't still hurt in ways that have nothing to do with physical pain, I tell him, and I'm crying too now, tears running down my cheeks and dripping off my chin. But I'm saying that I see who you're trying to be. I see the effort you're making to be worthy of the second chance my father gave you, and I'm saying that maybe, somehow, if we both survive whatever's coming, there might be a possibility of something between us that isn't just guilt, and obligation and protection. The words are barely out of my mouth before alarms are shrieking through the cabin, before Dante's men are shouting about multiple vehicles approaching from all directions, before Dante is pulling me to my feet and dragging me toward the panic room that's hidden behind a false wall in the bedroom. And I realize with a horrible, sinking certainty that this is it. This is the final confrontation that's been building since the moment I called my father's name in that restaurant. And as Dante pushes me into the reinforced room and tells me to stay hidden no matter what I hear, as I watch him check his weapons and prepare to face whatever's coming with the grim determination of a man who knows he might not survive the night, I understand that everything, my life, my father's vengeance, Dante's redemption, all of it, has been leading to this moment, and the only question is whether any of us will be left standing when the smoke finally clears and the bullets stop flying. The panic room is soundproofed, but not completely silent, and I can hear the muffled sounds of gunfire and shouting that tell me the battle raging outside is more intense than anything we've faced before. And I'm crouched in the corner with my hands pressed over my ears, trying to block out the violence, even though I know it won't help. Won't change the fact that men are dying out there, and some of them might be dying for me, including the man who once hurt me but who has spent every day since then proving that people can change if they want it badly enough. The minutes stretch into an eternity, each second marked by the thunder of weapons and the crash of what sounds like the cabin itself being torn apart. And I'm praying to a God I'm not sure I believe in anymore, begging for my father's safety, and for Dante's survival, and for some kind of ending to this nightmare that doesn't involve me being the only one left alive to carry the guilt of all these deaths. When the sounds finally stop, and the silence that follows is so complete it feels suffocating, I don't know if that means we've won or lost. Don't know if I should stay hidden or emerge to find out what's left of the people I've come to care about, despite every reason I have not to. The panic room door opens from the outside, the heavy locks disengaging with mechanical precision, and I'm scrambling backward in terror before I see that it's my father standing in the doorway, covered in blood that I desperately hope isn't his own, his face showing the strain of whatever battle just concluded, but his eyes alive and alert as they find me huddled in the corner. "It's over, Bambina," he says, and his voice is hoarse with exhaustion but steady. "Volkov is dead, his organization is scattered, and the threat against you is neutralized." The relief that floods through me is so intense it's almost painful, and I'm struggling to my feet and throwing myself into his arms, sobbing against his chest while he holds me and murmurs soothing words in Italian that I only half understand, but that comfort me anyway, because they're in my father's voice and he's alive and I'm alive and maybe, somehow, we've actually survived this. "Dante," I managed to say through my tears, pulling back to look at my father's face. "Where is he? Is he—" But Papa is already nodding toward the destroyed cabin behind him, and I can see Dante leaning against what's left of the doorframe, one hand pressed to his side where blood is seeping through his fingers, his face pale and drawn, but his eyes finding mine across the distance with an intensity that makes my breath catch. I'm running before I consciously decide to move, crossing the space between us, and throwing my arms around him despite his injuries, despite the fact that my embrace must be causing him pain, and he's holding me back with his free arm, and burying his face in my hair, and I can feel him shaking against me. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispers, and there's such raw emotion in his voice that it breaks something open inside me, some last wall I'd been maintaining against the feelings I've been developing for this complicated, damaged man who started as my attacker and became my protector, and is now something else entirely. Something I don't have words for yet. "You're not getting rid of me that easily," I tell him, trying for levity even though I'm crying and he's bleeding, and the cabin around us looks like a war zone, which I suppose it literally is. My father approaches us, and there's something in his expression that I've never seen before, a kind of resigned acceptance mixed with what might actually be approval. And when he speaks, his voice carries the weight of decisions made and futures determined. "Konstantin Volkov made a mistake when he tried to use you to hurt me," Papa says, addressing both of us but looking primarily at Dante. He thought you were my weakness, thought that threatening my daughter would break me. But what he failed to understand is that my greatest strength has always been my willingness to sacrifice everything to protect the people I love. And that includes trusting them to make their own choices about their own lives. He pauses, and I can see him gathering himself for whatever he's about to say next. Can see the struggle it represents for a man who spent his entire life controlling situations and people through force and fear. Isolde, you have a choice to make now, a choice that will determine the entire course of your future, he continues, and his eyes are on me now with an intensity that demands my full attention. I can take you away from all of this, can give you a new identity, and set you up somewhere far from here where you can build a normal life, where you can be just Isolde again, without the weight of being Alessandro Crane's daughter, without the danger, and the violence and the constant threat. And I will make sure you're protected from the shadows the way I should have done from the beginning. The offer hangs in the air between us, tempting in its simplicity, its promise of safety and normalcy, and a return to the invisible life I lived before everything changed. But even as part of me wants to accept it, wants to run away from this world of blood and bullets and impossible choices, I know with absolute certainty that I can't go back, that the woman I was before Dante slapped me in that restaurant is gone forever, and trying to resurrect her would be a betrayal of everything I've learned about myself in the weeks since. Or, my father continues, and now he's looking at Dante with an expression that's hard to read. You can choose to stay, to fully enter this world that you were born into but never knew, to stand beside Dante Salvatore not as a victim under his protection, but as his equal partner, to use the strength you've discovered in yourself and the strategic mind you inherited from me to build something new from the ashes of what Volkov tried to destroy. The choice he's offering me is enormous, overwhelming, the kind of decision that will echo through the rest of my life regardless of which path I choose, and I can feel both men watching me, waiting to see what I'll decide, whether I'll choose safety or danger, invisibility or power, the past or the future. I look at Dante, really look at him, seeing past the blood and the injuries to the man underneath, the man who's proven over and over that he's willing to die to keep me safe, who's worked every single day to become worthy of a forgiveness. I'm not sure he'll ever fully give himself, and I realize that somewhere in the midst of all this chaos and violence I've fallen in love with him, not despite what he did to me, but because I've seen his capacity for change, his willingness to sacrifice everything to make amends, his desperate desire to be better than the worst thing he's ever done. I'm staying, I say, and my voice is steady despite the enormousness of what I'm committing to. I'm staying because hiding didn't keep me safe, because invisibility didn't protect me from people who wanted to hurt my father through me, and because I've discovered that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible, that I have my father's gift for seeing 10 moves ahead, and a courage I didn't know I possessed. I turn to Dante, taking his free hand in both of mine, feeling the calluses on his palms, and the tremor that runs through him at my touch. And I'm staying because I choose you, Dante Salvatore. I choose this impossible, complicated thing between us that started with violence, but has become something else, something that might actually be worth fighting for. 6 months later, I'm standing in what used to be Dante's private office, but is now our shared space, looking out over the city that nearly killed me, but that I've learned to navigate with my father's cunning and Dante's resources. And I'm no longer the shy waitress who flinched at loud noises and avoided eye contact. But I haven't lost the essential kindness that Dante says he loves most about me, the compassion that makes me insist we help the people in our territory rather than just extracting from them. Dante comes up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder, and I can feel the wedding band on his finger pressing against my stomach, a symbol of the vows we took last month in a small ceremony attended only by my father and Nonna and a few trusted allies. What are you thinking about? he asks, and I lean back against him, feeling safe in his embrace in a way I never thought possible with the man who once hurt me. I'm thinking about how strange it is that the worst moment of my life led to this, I tell him honestly, because we've built our relationship on brutal honesty, on never hiding from the truth of how we started or the work it's taken to get here. I'm thinking about how that slap in the restaurant destroyed everything I thought I was, but gave me the chance to become everything I'm capable of being. He turns me in his arms so we're facing each other, and I can see the scar on my lip reflected in his eyes, the permanent reminder of his worst moment that I've chosen to keep rather than have surgically removed, because it's part of our story, part of the journey that brought us here. I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that your father gave me a chance to become worthy of you, Dante says, and there are tears in his eyes because even now, even after everything, he still carries the weight of what he did. And I will spend the rest of mine reminding you that you already are, I tell him, and then I'm kissing him, tasting forgiveness and love and the promise of a future we're building together from the broken pieces of our past and somewhere in the city below us. My father is watching over his empire of shadows, content in the knowledge that his daughter is not just safe but powerful, not just protected but dangerous in her own right, and that the gentle girl he tried so hard to keep innocent has become a woman who can navigate darkness without losing her light, who can wield power without sacrificing compassion, who can love a man who hurt her because she understands that people are more than the worst things they've ever done, and that sometimes the most beautiful transformations come from the most brutal beginnings.